In this lesson, we will take a look at the while loop in Python, which is used to repeatedly execute a block of code as long as a specified condition is true. The while loop is considered an indefinite loop because the number of iterations is not predetermined like the for loop. The loop will continue to be executed until the condition becomes false or a break statement is encountered, and we'll be seeing the break statement in the following video. Let's head to PyScripter and check out the while loop. We'll create a variable called num and set this equal to 1 and hit enter. We'll then jump straight into our while loop. While num is less than or equal to 5, we will print the num followed by the string is less than or equal to 5. Hit enter. We're then going to increment our num variable by 1 on each loop with plus equals. This plus equals, as we saw previously, is the same as setting the variable to equal num plus 1 each time. It is just shorthand. So we'll use plus equals 1. Okay, let's take stock of what is happening here. We've set a variable called num to equal 1. While the num variable is less than or equal to 5, we are going to loop through and print num followed by a string and then update the num variable by 1. On the first iteration, num is going to equal 1. It is less than or equal to 5. So we will print 1 is less than or equal to 5. Our num variable then gets incremented by 1 to equal 2. So num now equals 2, which is still less than or equal to 5. 2 is less than or equal to 5 is printed to the screen, and num now becomes 3. And so on until we hit 6. When num is equal to 6, this statement is now false because num is not less than or equal to 5. The while loop ends. So let's hit enter and enter again. And you can see how rapidly Python printed that to the screen. So once the statement becomes false, the while loop ends. Let's create a variable called total and we'll set this equal to 0. We'll create a variable called num and set this equal to 1. We'll then use our while loop and we're going to sum the numbers from 1 to 100 using the while loop. So while our num variable is less than or equal to 100, we use a colon. We call our total variable and we set this to plus equal num. So in each iteration, we are adding the num value to our total. We then want to increment the num value with each iteration. So num plus equal 1, and we will print the total each time the screen. So let's walk through this. While our num variable is less than or equal to 100, we are going to add the num each time to the total. With each iteration, we are incrementing the num by 1, and then we're printing the total to the screen. On the first iteration, num is equal to 1, and this returns true. Total will then be 0 plus 1, which will be 1, and num will become 2, and 1 will be printed to the screen. Num will become 2. Total will be 1 plus 2, which is 3, and num will be incremented by 1 again to 3, and the total of 3 will be printed. Num will become 3. The total will be 3 plus 3, which is 6, and num will be incremented again to 4, and the total will be printed to the screen. So let's hit enter and run this code. Scroll up and we can see we got our 1, 3, 6, 4 was added for 10, 5 added, 6 added, 7 added, 8 added, and so on until we get a total of 5050. Now, while loops can be dangerous. You can enter an infinite loop. If we had num equals 1, and then we had a while loop where while true will always be true, but you might have an expression that never becomes false. We'll print num and we'll increment num by 1 each time. Now, I don't recommend that you run this. I'm going to run it just to see that this is going to keep going and keep going. So I've put nothing in there to stop this while loop, and it's just going to keep going infinitely. I will kill this with the stop command to interrupt, but you must be very careful when writing your scripts that you have a breakpoint in your while loop, and we're going to see the break keyword in use in the next video. In this video we saw the while loop in Python in action, and it is used to repeatedly execute a block of code as long as a specified condition is true. Once that condition becomes false, the while loop will end. But you have to be very careful that you do not enter an infinite loop.